Okay, so the first thing that I do when I'm getting ready to paint is I prepare my paper. This is watercolor paper. I'm using Strathmore, and it is, if you can see this, it's 140 pounds. It's a good weight for watercolor paper. I think they come all the way up to like 300 pounds, which makes them nice and thick and great to work with for painting. So the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to use gesso on this. I've got Liquitex Basic Acrylic Gesso, and I'm going to cover this with some gesso so that it does a couple of things. It helps the paint adhere better to the paper since I'm using acrylic paint. And when I tape it, which I will be taping it, and I'll show you that, it helps the tape come up better, and the tape doesn't stick to the paper. So I'm just going to brush this all over. It's a little hard to see because it is white gesso on white paper. And I'm going to need a little bit more gesso. A couple of more drops should do it. See a little piece of trash there. It will probably get painted over, but I still don't want it in there. Okay, now I'm just going to go over it and make sure I got the whole paper gessoed. See, it'll pop up like that. It buckles a little bit, but when it dries, it will be flat. And as you look and change your view, you'll see little spots where you need to go back over it. And that'll be easier to see on your paper than it is for you to see on my paper. But I think mine is pretty good. So I'm going to let that dry. Now, here's a piece of paper I've done beforehand, and it's dry. So you can see it still kind of buckles a little bit. And that's why we're going to tape it down. So I've got tape here, just regular masking tape. Just regular masking tape. I try to line it up with the edges so it's nice and straight. Okay, those four corners are done, and we are ready to get started. Okay, we are going to paint this is my reference painting. This is what I did for one of my collections, and I did it on canvas. As you can see, it's a nice little gallery wrapped canvas, and I'm going to recreate it here on my paper. So the colors that I'm going to use are white, of course, titanium white. I'll use a ton of white. So I'm going to have a little white. The yellow that I use is a little bit of this cadmium yellow medium. I don't need a lot of that. I just need a little bit of that. I also use this Indian yellow, which is just my favorite right now. I'm really loving this color and how it mixes and blends with all the other colors that I like to use. I'm I'm also using this Phlato blue. That is one of my favorite blues, and I use it a lot. There's a little blue. I've got my white. And I come in with some greens. This is sap green. This is a little green gold, which is just a beautiful color. I always have it on my palette no matter what's going on because it mixes great with everything. All right. Okay, so that's my palette, and then I always put down a little bit of red, even though there's no red. There's really no red in here. But what the red does is it will tone down some of that green if I need it toned down. So I always keep a little red in my studio. I'm not a big fan of red. I don't like the color red. I don't use the color red very often. Sometimes I'll use pink, but I don't like red. But red is the opposite of green on the color wheel. You know, red and green Christmas. That's how you can remember it. And if you ever need to tone down your green, if it's too bright, then you add some red to it. If you need to tone down your red, add some green to it. That's just a little of the same. Those are complementary colors, and the other ones are purple and yellow, or purple and gold, and blue and orange. Those are your complementary colors on your color wheel. They will tone each other down. Okay, trash on my paper. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is mix up some blue and white really lightly. Maybe a little bit more white. Okay, and I'm going to have mostly sky. I'll have a little bit of mountain, and I'm just going to wiggle my brush around to get that mountain line. Add a little water to this because it's a little bit dry. Try to get this good blue base for the sky. Yours does not need to look exactly like mine. I just mixed a little Phlato blue with the white till I got the color sky that I wanted. And then I've got this little mountain ridge outline at the bottom. Most of the sky is going to get covered with clouds, but I do like that background. Okay. Next I'm going to come in with the mountains. I'm going to take a little bit of the sap green, a little bit of white. Always got to have some white. The white keeps the paint opaque, which means it is less see-through. There's a little more weight to it. It lightens up the color, which we like. And so lots of painters use a lot of white. All right, I'm mixing little bits of this red into my green so I can get a nice dark olive green for my mountains. Okay, so I'm just going to come in here and try to follow this line. The mountains are far away. I always paint the Blue Ridge Mountains, which is common where I live. And they're very soft rolling mountains. They don't have sharp peaks like out in the west, like the Rocky Mountains might have out in the west. They're very, very soft and very rolling. Okay, all that's probably going to get painted over. but we want it to all dry. Okay, so I'm going to come back in and paint some of my clouds. I use this mop brush. It's called an oval mop because I like how thick it is, and I like how you get these funky rounded shapes that I really love. So I'm going to go in here with this Indian yellow and pick up some of that and some of the white, because it's just such a beautiful color. Maybe just a touch of this gold green. And I'm just going to come in here and just give myself some color to be working with. When I mix it with the white, I'll have some really nice color to pick up. Okay, I'm going to put some of it down here. Let's see. What all this looks like. Give myself a little bit of fields before I get to the mountains. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna come back in with some white. And for the white, I just like to, for the clouds, I just like to roll my brush around. Everybody has like a little natural tendency of how they move the brush, and whatever yours is, you should go with that. You do not have to make yours look exactly like mine. In fact, you probably don't want it to. You want it to look like it's yours. And not a copy of somebody else's. Gonna let a little of that blue sky peek through. Okay, I like that. I want to come back some more with this Indian yellow and get some darker values in here. And again, I really let the paint do what it wants to do, and I try to appreciate that, and I try not to mess up the paint too much. Again, I've got a really thick layer of white on here. I'm going to be stopping in just a minute because I don't want to go through. I don't want to just pile on lots of paint. Okay, there's a great sky. I like that a lot. It has lots of values. Some darker values up here, some darker values at the bottom. I'm probably going to come in here and clean up this line a little bit. Although I don't hate that. I don't hate that scrubbiness. And it has some really nice, sharp white values in different places. And I don't want to blend all of that out. I want that to stay. Okay, let's go back to the mountains. I'm going to pick up a little of the sap green, mix it with my gold green that I love, and some white. And I'll pick up a little bit of the Indian yellow just to be consistent with my colors. That's one of the things you want to do, is you want to repeat the colors that you use in different sections of your painting and different elements. Gives it some unity, and we're all about the unity. Okay, here is, I'm gonna add a little more white. So the mountains that are further away are always lighter. That's just a fact of nature. Whatever's further away is lighter. It's one of the ways that we show depth, is that we make whatever's further away lighter, and whatever is closer is darker or more colorful or more bright, more vibrant. Those are just some basic painting techniques. And if you will look out your window and kind of notice how colors look in real nature, you will see that that's happening. Okay, now I'm going to trade out and get one of my little thin brushes, and I'm going to come in and put in some details in my mountains. Okay, so I love the blue mixed in with the green. I make a big bunch of that. I don't want it to be too blue. But I get kind of this teal color. And then I just kind of start at the top, and I just kind of wiggle it all the way down and see what the brush does. And usually whatever the brush does is pretty okay. I'll lighten it up a little bit for the mountains in the background. And I'll keep adding some white until I get something that I like. Just kind of see what that does. Just using a kind of a slanted motion because mountains kind of slant down toward the ground. I'm liking that. I like that a lot. I'm going to give myself a little bit of a ridge outline here. I need a little water with that. Okay, we definitely want to be able to tell which mountain is which. Okay, and which ones are in the background and which ones are in the foreground. All right, so now I'm taking a little bit of this green gold and mixing that in with this lighter blue color that I did, and I'm going to work on this mountain over here. And what I want this to do is kind of slope out this way. And again, I'm just kind of scrubbing my brush back and forth over this mountain. And kind of seeing what we get here. And I go really fast, and this is kind of what I'm getting on that mountain. I like that. I try to keep this little brush as dry as possible, but can still mix in with the paint. And I try to use some different colors so we get some different values on these mountains. And if it starts getting too dry, I will just add a little bit of water to it. But it's this dryness that gives me this scrubby texture for my mountains that I like a lot. All right, I'm going to come back in with some of this cadmium yellow and a lot of white. And I need a really light shade here. Where I think the sun is going to be hitting the mountain, which is going to be on this slope, my left slope. And it's probably going to come all the way down. Where the sun would hit it. And there might be a couple of spots on this mountain where it's going to get hit. And then, of course, on this side. I know I'm working fast. I know when you first start out, you work much slower. I get that. That's something that we all do. Now, I'm going to come back in with some of this blue. I want to make the blue color that I made in the sky. I'm going to remix that because I want to add some of that into my mountain too. So that should be in there. Oh, I love this. Love this. Okay, that's so pretty. And then I'll put a little bit of it over in here. I think that's a good place for it to be. And again, you know, it's just the practice. The more you practice, the more you know what you want, and the more you know what you want your mountains or your painting, whatever you're painting, what to look like. And so we try to get all of that in there. Okay, I think I'm liking that. I'm going to go back in with the blue, a little bit of blue that's on my brush. And I'm going to come back in here for a couple of places, just random. Because I'm going to come back over here with some hot white in a second. And add the last layer for my clouds. Get my brush really nice and clean because I want that white to be as pure white as it can be, so it'll pop really nicely on these clouds. And I'm just going to kind of come back over here where I have given that blue, so the blue gives me a little bit of color in here that I can play with. Scrub some of that hard line out, and again, just kind of let it do what it does. Just see what you get. Come down here and try to get some of this scrubbiness out. And try to get my clouds to float a little bit. Okay. I think that's done. I think if I was working on this for me, I would be going back and forth with this Indian yellow and the white, and you know, coming back in here in certain places and trying to get a little bit more of that yellow tone. I think it's so pretty. And one of the things that I do is I wipe my brush till it's almost dry, and then I like to kind of come in here and just kind of play with everything a little bit. Put a little white on that because I like that right in the center of my painting. Have that little thing there. Okay, at this point it's kind of wet, so I need to leave it alone because I'm just going to start to mess it up. But there you go. There are your mountains with a really moody sky. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer anything that you want to know. Thank you.